JB Knowledge Podcast Network.
On episode 67 of the Insurtech Geek Podcast, talking about Parametric Cargo Insurance with Yann Barbarroux from Otonomi. The Insurtech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. Another day. As we record this, it's Friday, October 15th, 2021. We're in the fourth quarter of 21, which is insane. It's like we've been in a freaking time warp since January of 2020, and hard to believe it's 8 quarters later since the vid hit. But having a successful Insurtech Connect just makes it all feel like the world's coming back together a little bit. A lot of people got together in Vegas. It was busy. We had a booth there for our two products, Smart Compliance and TerraClaim. We were there talking about certificate of insurance tracking and then insurance claims management for P&C and comp, and we had a busy Insurtech Connect. Unfortunately, and I am really pissed about this, I didn't get to go because yours truly had a little ankle surgery. Unpleasant, but that's okay. It's okay. I keep telling myself it's okay. There's always next year, or is there? Because I said there's always next year in 2019 when I missed Insurtech Connect that year. I was thinking I was at the same booth. I think, Yann, you missed 19, and then obviously everybody missed 20 because it was virtual and stuff. Isn't that right, Yann?
Yeah, 2020 was not too exciting. You already get tired of Zoom every day.
Yeah.
So this year was a big event.
Yeah.
Very glad I attended this year, sorry.
Yeah, lucky duck. I just had to sit at home. That's okay. It's all good. I'm not bitter or anything. I did get to watch my fighting Texas Aggies beat the tar out of Alabama in College Station. It was exciting. Of course, football really jazzes me up, and that was an exciting event. With us, also in the great state of Texas, the illustrious, the most interesting, Rob Galbraith. Rob, what's up, buddy?
Hey, James, congratulations on your Aggie victory.
Oh, man.
It was very sweet. I stayed up
So
late.
excited.
I was fighting it, but I did manage to stay up for the whole game. And ITC was amazing. It was great to see so many folks. There was a ton of folks, of course, I didn't get a chance to see. I was telling Yann I was only there for just over a day, really Monday afternoon to Tuesday afternoon before I had to fly out for another conflicting event. So I don't know how many people were there in person. It was definitely less than a kind of typical year, but it was still quite chaotic. And, I know a lot of folks have been to events, maybe, 200-300 folks since the pandemic's been in the, ebb and flow. But seeing this many people all at once. And I think everyone was trying to figure out the protocols. It's like, are we fist bumping? Are we shaking hands? Are we hugging? Are we keeping 6 feet apart? Are we taking our masks off if we're talking one-on-one and keeping them on or whatever? So a lot of confusion over the protocols.
A lot of confusion. It's interesting. My kids' school, they said that the masks were encouraged, and I tell you that lasted for about 3 hours the first day, and then after that there was no masks at all. I mean, it was like, no, I'm not wearing that. It's like, of course, most are vaccinated. I'm vaccinated, so go Vax.
Yeah.
With us today, again, we have Yann, CEO and head of analytics at Otonomi. He's over in Brooklyn, not too far from my niece. My beloved niece, Emily, lives over there in Brooklyn. She loves it. She's having a great time. Now, you're not from Brooklyn, though.
How do you know?
You're not.
How did you know?
Let me guess. Why did I know that Yann is not from Brooklyn?
That's pretty good.
Also because of where you went to school, my friend. You don't go to A Marseille when you're from Brooklyn. So I think we have a Frenchman on here, but I'm going to let you say where you were born and raised.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm from Marseille, France, not Marseille, Texas. And so I grew up there, went to grad school in Paris back in the early 2000s, studied computer science. So I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, but I decided to jump ship, shift gears towards financial services, and started my first job in Wall Street in 2003. So I've been in the US for 18 years, mostly in New York, Brooklyn, Manhattan. Been enjoying it, navigating between technology, capital market, risk management in downtown Manhattan at several banks, financial institutions. Most recently, I used to work at Citigroup in their ventures innovation studio, very much at essentially the intersection between financial product and integration of deep tech, so blockchain, machine learning, all the buzzwords you like. And in 2019, I thought that innovating from a big behemoth in Wall Street can become very boring, and essentially took the leap of faith and started my startup.
That's awesome. And let's talk about France for a second. I have a significant percentage of my genetic heritage from France. I'm from South Louisiana, and my grandmother was very French. Julia Pellegrin.
Wow.
Spoke French, and I first went to France. So I'm class of 01 in college as well, class of 03. So you and I were in undergrad and grad school at the same time.
Sure.
And I went over as a high school graduation gift. My dad took me to Europe, and we stayed in Paris and took the Eurostar to London.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I'd heard a lot about French culture. I got to experience French culture. Of course, I'm a massive fan of French wine.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite white wine is Pouilly Foussé. Like my favorite, a good Louis Jadot Pouilly Foussé is like spot on for me. Okay, so just be aware. My favorite cheese, Brie.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know. I love a good baguette. I feel very French, and I identified with the. There was something funny when we were on the Eurostar train, and we took this super high speed train through the Channel. 1997, Channel wasn't that old at the time, and we get to the other side. The French train conductor gets on the intercom, and he says, "We have arrived in England, and we're going to slow down because the British tracks cannot support the speeds of the French tracks."
Very good. Very good.
And I just started cracking up. I'm like, that is such some passive aggressive, angry stuff there. And of course, it was true because the French had seamless tracks that supported 300-kilometer-an-hour speeds and everything else. And the British tracks were slower. But he was making sure that everyone on the train knew that the British tracks were inferior to the French tracks. And so I appreciate it.
Which is absolutely true, by the way. I support as again his comment.
Yeah. But that being said, I'm a Formula One fan. I'm not a fan of Renault. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely on team Mercedes. So sorry about that. But you've been around. You started at a French firm, Société Générale.
That's correct.
Over in New York,
right.
The New York branch of Société Générale. So you're there for a few years. What did you learn along the way in investment banking and then in banking? So you did investment banking, and then you did banking, and then you were in global markets, and then you were in this innovation center. What did you learn along the way that landed you over in insurance?
Yeah, so my first foray into a financial institution at Société Générale was the intersection of love and financial services. It's very glamorous to work for a French company in Midtown. Well, I'm kind of kidding about it, but they're very professional in terms of their modeling and their engineering. They're probably not the best at deal making. So, sooner or later, I was essentially very attracted by joining American platform where you meet the biggest talent right in the Wall Street sector, and I managed to join a few brokers and eventually Citigroup, where I was alongside very big talents in emerging market structuring, a lot of very talented financial engineers, and also at the intersection of the best technology out there. So along the way, I think I want to say deal making, going through several crises. The Lehman crisis in 2008 taught me quite a bit and got me ready for what's coming next. In my current experience with my current startup, building full-blown underwriting model on a statistical basis, full automated operations. We know that the insurance needed so badly, and I'm bringing the best of the operations and financial and engineering of Wall Street into the insurance space. So that's the thesis here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about Otonomi. What does Otonomi do now? What did you start it out to do, and what does it do now for Otonomi?
Yeah, so there's two drivers of why I was very attracted to found my startup. And by the way, my co-founder Seb, who's a schoolmate from grad school in Paris, who now lives in Colorado, is married from a girl from Texas. So I was in Dallas for his wedding about 9 years ago. So it's also like, in my heart somewhere. So he used to work for Renault. So he would be pretty mad at you, I guess, from your comments. But he's now.
When Red Bull switched from the Renault engines over to Honda, because the Renault engines kept blowing up, and I was like, oh man! And the Renault guys were like, yeah, it is not the engines; it is the way they are managing and running them. And he's like, no, it's Renault. And then they switched, and then of course Verstappen did really well with Honda engines. I'm just saying, it is what it is. All right, sorry, interrupted. Go ahead.
Yeah, you like your French accent, don't you?
my fake terrible French accent. I'm not claiming it's good.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. No, so what I was going to say is Seb and I, good friends from 20 years, we got into blockchain, right? So that was kind of the premise of how we get into this smart contract automation of claims. So at first, back in 2016, 2017, where the market was pumping up, we got excited about prototyping, first smart contract in Ethereum, going to conference, speaking at events, writing white papers and whatnot. And after a while, we said, this is the one thing we want to do full time. And, that's what pushed me and pushed Seb and, to just jump ship and create the Otonomi back in 2019. The second thing is more nerdy. It's very much from my own background. I, dabbled and, specialize in financial derivative, securitized product. And, this, experience and understanding of the market gave me some sense of what's happening in parametric insurance was very well underserved. I thought, from a top-down approach, what you want to look at is the financial derivative market is $100 trillion, and the parametric insurance space is $100 billion. So there's a 1,000x opportunity here, and we want to bridge the gap. We believe that we'll be bringing huge amount of exponential growth in the parametric insurance space, and there's other startups that are doing an amazing job as well.
So for the uninitiated out there that don't understand what parametric insurance, break down the basics.
That's a good one. I told you I'm very nerdy about it. So parametric insurance policies are data or index-driven contract that independently trigger and automatically pay out. So we're getting rid of the manual adjudication of claims in this case. So let me give you an example. So there's been some parametric policies for quite some time in the crop insurance or weather insurance, right? So let's say...
They automatically pay out. Yeah, the event happens and they automatically pay out.
That's right. So if you are farmers in the Midwest and you have some issues with rain or precipitation level, your parametric product is going to be, triggering and get you money same day. So without manual intervention. So we're bringing that concept into logistics, cargo, and marine, which is very novel.
Yeah, because that means there's no need for anyone to go out and check it out. It just automatically, they use the data feed. Of course, parametric insurance being enabled by massive amounts of big data systems that actually collect and store and track this that we trust, right? Parametric insurance doesn't work unless you have a data source that's accurate and verifiable and trustworthy, right?
That's correct. So the event trigger has to be independent and also secured and encrypted, right? So for that, what we called decentralized truth generation, which is essentially saying you get an event trigger that people can trust on an autonomous basis, independent basis, is actually generated by our blockchain partner, Chainlink. Chainlink is one of the top 10 companies in the space. And they essentially giving the capability of automating the connectivity of the outside world for real life assets into the blockchain. So let's say a cargo ship with sensors or trackers has some signals. We go through Chainlink, we encrypt, and we communicate with a smart contract, and everything is automated and secured. So that's the way we do it.
That's awesome. And blockchain, again, for the uninitiated, blockchain is the underlying technology under Bitcoin. It is basically an encrypted immutable digital ledger where you add blocks of data onto previous blocks of data and you can't edit them or delete them later. Once they've been added, they are irrevocable, cannot be modified because of the nature of the encryption program, unless, of course, you threw like a quantum computer at it, and then you could probably hash and brute force it. But we won't talk about quantum computing and how it blows up blockchain. We can just discuss that another time. But there's all kinds of really cool things that have come out of blockchain. We talk about blockchain a lot less than 3 years ago. Mainly because the technologies that were going to use it are already using it, and they're just not talking about using it anymore. That's the interesting thing I've noticed from a marketing perspective. Now, we write code. I've got 250 employees, and 200 of them are software developers, and we deal with all kinds of underlying technologies that we don't talk about in our marketing literature, right? Why would we? No one really cares necessarily how you get to the end result. They just care what the end result is, and the end result here is that it can't be, for your case, for Parametric Insurance, it's a trusted, verifiable data source, and it can't be edited or deleted. So you have trust wrapped around all of Parametric Insurance, because if you lose trust in the raw data feed and the history, then the whole system kind of breaks down, right?
That's correct. No, that's a great kind of introduction to the concept. And, to just preface the conversation, I agree with you. 2017, 2018 was a lot of this ramp up and all the rage about the blockchain, Bitcoin and whatnot. Everybody's happy that, it kind of cooled down a little bit. It was a little too much, too fast back in the days. We got rid of some clowns in the area, right? So some hackers, some people that, are not helping the industry. And we left up with, robust people such as us and other players, which are doing a very, very good job. We want to do several things with blockchain. First, we want to be servicing enterprise solutions, which is not, necessarily an easy task because, Bitcoin is all public, decentralized ledger. People can get scared about it. Insurance incumbents are very conservative. And so having this decentralized network can be scary for them. So we kind of find some solution to get around it, but still have the power of blockchain being involved. The second thing for our case, which is very novel, is the fact that we're actually connecting with real life assets, right? So containers, shipment that can be perishables, vaccines, very very current topic, as you can probably imagine, or very timeline sensitive assets such as aviation parts, electronic parts, or whatnot. And the connection between the real life and the blockchain is where we actually excel, right? So there's been a lot of those crypto insurance in place, which are great for whatever it is, but now people are interested in real life asset use cases, which is what we want to bring to the market. And then in terms of technology, that does, several things very well. So the first one is programmatic activation of terms and economics. So our smart contracts are essentially like a mini CPA and a mini attorney, working independently without having any manual intervention. So they are very much independent legal entity that can execute terms and execute economics. The second thing is the fact that we are in logistics, cargo, and marine. There's such siloed and essentially separated monitoring of assets, which is essentially broken down right now. It's very opaque. It's very hard to actually monitor assets in the supply chain. The blockchain is a very great tool to break down the walls and bring transparency and bring a lot of speed in terms of knowing what's going on, right? So we bring in a lot of this blockchain power in the space. And finally, I want to say digital transaction, right? So we digital first in terms of payments, settlements. We make it fast. We make it very economical, and we don't have invoicing, check, and the old school payment that you see still often in the insurance world, unfortunately.
Rob?
Yeah, and it's really fascinating what you guys are doing in Otonomi and your background, and I can definitely relate to somebody innovating right at large organizations and then kind of spinning out on your own after bringing a lot of those hard-earned lessons over the years. So tell me a little bit more about the specific use cases that you've enabled to date, the air cargo insurance, and then you mentioned marine, ground transportation. I know is on your radar. Are you only going to go in the cargo sector? Are you looking to go beyond the cargo sector? And maybe you can talk a little bit about what use cases are really best for the solution set that you're describing.
Yeah, pretty front-loaded questions, but there's so much to be unpacked here. So, your first question. So, our beachhead, our MVP, is in air freight, as you mentioned. So, the air freight product is a full end-to-end automation of detection of event trigger for cargo delay, interruption, and disruptions of supply chain, which are automated through this chaining oracle that we mentioned before. Programmatic execution of claims and digital settlements in less than 45 minutes. So, aka from a 45 days adjudication manually in the traditional world, we compress to 45 minutes. So, it's an 100x resolution time improvement for the clients, aka the freight forwarders, logistics players. The next step for us on the horizontal integration is to bring the same type of use cases in ocean marine and inland trucking. Right, so the ground trucking and the ocean marine are bigger markets. They're also more complicated in terms of data structure, operations, and transparency. So as much it is, very, very compelling. So you can think about the Suez Canal, right? So what happened, in March, April. The clients, the 3PLs would be dying to have our autonomy protection in this case, but it is also kind of harder to establish, right? So the data and analytics, which are now by the trillion, still need to be organized some more. So what we're looking at here is partnering with data team, sensors and hardware team that provide quality data, secure and encrypted, and then essentially manufacture parametric policies to the need of their end clients, right? So we want to partner hand in hand with the data experts, and we are the operation and pricing experts on the other end. So we believe that this is a great way of leveraging data, which is, again, very, very big amount, very, very large depth, and also such a great expertise in the space that's been developing in the past 5-10 years. Now, on the vertical level for integration that's in air freight, we'll be going further into creating more use cases in temperature monitoring, humidity, fire and smoke that can be happening, leveraging also sensors, embedded trackers in aircraft. The temperature is such a very interesting use case because, vaccine, perishables, and other kind of refrigerated assets are suffering that kind of problems anytime there's a delay or interruption of supply chain. And in this case, the delay protection is one good thing, but having the granularity of temperature monitoring and where you can actually trigger under a certain threshold is actually be very, very valuable for the pharma company and others. So that's the kind of use cases we're contemplating in the future.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing to life some of the concepts I talked about in my book, The End of Insurance as We Know It, this idea of really getting down to the granular data, right? The atomic level data that's coming from streaming sensors that's able to, connect either via cell network or Wi-Fi to cloud computing, where all this information can be stored using advanced algorithms to make sense of it all, rather than the way that we've traditionally priced and underwritten these products, which is very much a swag, right? And you kind of hope in aggregate law of large numbers, we get it right, but you're just not able to get down to the level of detail that you're talking about. Very exciting. James?
Yeah, let's. You're making a pivot because you're going from providing tech to others to being your own MGA, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And what's the excitement there? Obviously, probably dropping the time to quote. And by the way, I got to pause for just a second. I'm a pilot. I love talking. You mentioned air transport. I fly every week, so you were actually talking about parts, and it's a little raw because I've been trying to get parts for the last 2 weeks, and I finally got them. So I'm actually able to fly again. You wouldn't believe you would believe. Everybody would believe how hard it is to find things right now. A nitrogen bottle.
Oh,
kind of important.
Yeah.
Took me a few weeks to locate one of those. I had to get just batteries. I mean, just like basic stuff is pretty challenging, but provenance on materials really matters. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why what you're talking about is really interesting. And particularly to me because of my passion for aviation and flying and dealing with airplanes. You're making a pivot from being a technology provider to being an MGA, a pivot a lot of people have made in Insurtech, right? They're getting tired of enabling other people to do this. They're saying, hey, I can have a carrier back me and I can go be an MGA and get double the commission a broker gets and go streamline underwriting and streamline all the claims management. Yeah, and then in this case, you've ultimately streamlined the claims management, right? It's auto adjudication. So, and you're only targeting parametric. How far can Parametric really go? I mean, you're targeting things that have some really good data feeds. Like one of my friends runs marinetraffic.com. Okay, so you have marinetraffic.com, and that gives you a lot of shipping data. And there's a ton of data on airplanes. And so you're targeting industries that are data rich. Right? What's the obvious path now for you now that you're an MGA? Like beyond just marine and transportation logistics and air transport, where does it keep going? And like, where does parametric insurance run into a brick wall?
Yeah, just like the $1 trillion question, I guess. I want to say, like, we're not short of ideas in the space. And, I've been kind of like surprised in a good way and pretty fascinated at ITC last week that the amount of parametric ideas and, projects and startups that have been involved have multiplied, and this is a very good sign. Another good sign, you probably heard about Jumpstart Recovery and Earthquake, Parametric on the West Coast. They just like exited. So it's, the market is forming. People are recognizing it's becoming more mainstream. It's not as scary as it used to be. The quality of data, as you said, is actually one of the big drivers to clouds API, but also embedded IoTs. So that's something that was not a conversation to be had in 2010. In the 2020s, that's definitely something that's very, very apparent and very logical for incumbents, logistics, and others. So within cargo and marine, one thing that's essentially overlooked is we'll be relying on sensors, hardware, and those infrastructure data platform. So therefore, there's an angle of protecting the device, the trackers, and protecting against cyber attack. Right. So we believe that, the kind of the intersection of cargo, marine, and cyber is actually a very big market that we want to address because at that point we'll be, kind of running years and years of cargo operations on automated basis, but we want to secure our own data source, right? And secure the data source of the logistics player. So therefore, having security insurance and cybersecurity insurance embedded within our program is going to be beneficial on both sides. So that's a big market already. Now, if you ask me in general, like Parametric, I had some prototype, a couple of years ago in travel, for instance, right? It's also aviation related, but definitely like more consumer related. So that's interesting. The flight refunds using Parametric is something that, people are doing different products, but have a little bit of the same principle. So we dabble in that, that area for a few months. We looked at the Airbnb space as well. So like short-term rentals, it's somewhere that you want to be able to actually protect for the sake of the host or the guest. There's more and more of a smart device in homes, such as Nest, Latch, or whatever it is. So you can actually connect those signals and parameters and create parametric policies on the back of it as well. Automatically detecting some floods or fires in apartment buildings or real estate. That's something that can be very much improved. Parametric is there to help. I want to say that there's definitely more to it. We talked about business interruption through COVID. There's definitely some data that can analyze in terms of cash flows, revenues that could be triggering certain compensation for businesses in order to survive instead of having like manual adjudication from adjusters for months and months. So in that case, Parametric can help. Credit insurance, mortgage insurance. If you have another hour, we can go for forever. But there's definitely more and more of the data analytics that could be triggering policies in the future.
Yeah, and of course, the farther that IoT goes, right, the more that we can take parametric insurance, because the key is being able to collect data at the origination point from a trusted third-party system, not a self-reported system.
Right.
Honestly, drones play heavily into this, I think, at the same time, because you could automate assessment in a disaster zone after a cat.
That's right.
If you have a hurricane and you go and fly your drone over the affected area, take real-time high-res imagery of all the roofs and all the houses and all the flooding, you could start paying claims out immediately based on what you're reading. I mean, there's some really interesting things you could do there that would really speed up payments and reduce the cost of claims adjusting and make clients happier. I mean, there's a kind of all around there. So it's an interesting conversation. Yeah, you can kind of take it to the nth degree, right?
Yes, I think the home run for Parametric is risk prevention, right? So you going like, one step ahead, right? So it's not like auto adjudication after the fact, is actually predicting certain perils. And therefore, like, bringing the value to the end client, saying like, we actually detected, a certain pattern. It seems like, should be course correcting in certain ways. And then if you think about it, that's also like something that the life and health insurance should be leveraging, right? So monitoring heart rate, sugar level, whatever it is also something that can be not only triggering some health compensation, but also preventing a lot of those problems and gets you like healthier faster. So that's another use case that we can think about.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. That's awesome. Rob.
Yeah, just a great conversation. And I think you've really articulated, right, where some of the possibilities are, which is pretty incredible. So you mentioned ITC, you mentioned the growth in Parametric, and I completely agree with you. I've heard about it more and more. I think it was kind of a concept, and there were definitely some MVPs that were out there maybe 3-4 years ago, but it just seems like there's been an explosion in parametric offerings this year in 2021. And you mentioned your time at ITC, kind of coming across some of those and kind of fueling your thoughts going forward. So yeah, just thinking maybe anything you wanted to share from ITC. We talked a little bit about just the experience of being back together after 2 years. So how was the experience for you, and what are you taking from that going forward?
Yeah, so last week, 72 hours frantic, back-to-back meetings was definitely, as exciting. It was also like very tiring, but, definitely like, the great experience. I wrote an article about my 3 days there, so I can share a Medium article. So it ended with David Copperfield's resident show at MGM where I was staying. So there was also like some quirky moment. But in any case, the few things is, more and more startups involved in the space is not only, claim adjudication automation is very much going, full quantitative on the way you design policy from the get-go. So that was very exciting on the innovation side of things. What's also interesting is the reception and open-mindedness of capacity providers, like towards more esoteric model, right? So there was, your panel of traditional, top 10 reinsurance, your mid-market reinsurance people that are essentially, more into specialty E&S and other areas, and very excited about new solution that they can bring to the market. And then also like alternative capacity providers, such as captive. So captive insurance are looking at the way of diversifying the offer. So Parametric is actually well designed. When you think about, let's say, the Delta Cargo, operating a self-insuring a lot of their SLAs or containers, then a captive insurance actually makes a ton of sense for them. So there's a lot of those things that can be happening. And other players in also the more esoteric, like hedge funds related kind of reinsurance capacity providers. It's like derivative form, SPVs, which are willing to actually generate yields, with treasury rates in a very, very low level. And people are trying to be creative to diversify the asset classes and how to generate premium and add-on yields. And in this case, we might have like, a panel of syndication from traditional reinsurance plus new alternative source of balance sheet as well. So that was fascinating. I was very excited about this perspective, and it gave us a lot of follow-up meetings after the fact. So this week, following week, and whatnot, that's going to be very productive on that perspective. And as you pointed out, James, we did, kind of started as a claim SaaS, a lot of automation on a white labeling standpoint. And sooner or later that we realized that we want to actually have skin in the game, control the narrative. I'm coming from a lot of quantitative financial modeling. So actually we created our statistical and quantitative underwriting model internally, which was validated by an independent actuarial. In any case, that's the one thing we want to do. We don't want to just monolithically automate workflow. We want to actually create a product end to end from subscription, pricing, risk, automation, and payments. And being this tech-enabled MGA is what actually can unleash that kind of possibilities.
Awesome. Well, great discussion. I'm excited about the future of air transport, marine and cargo insurance, and parametric insurance in general. Of course, you can go and check out Otonomi at their website if you like, and that's Otonomi, OTONOMI.ai. Otonomi.ai. You can go and check that out there. Now, Rob, kind of following on ITC, you had a little bit of Insurtech news.
I do, yeah. So I've got 3 pieces this week. 2 of them are kind of related. So probably the biggest headline, one of the biggest headlines leaving ITC was Chubb CEO Evan Greenberg basically kind of poo-pooing Insurtech, calling it hype, and just saying that the article in Carrier Management kind of talks about how, yes, maybe there's been some acceleration of the use of technology within the insurance sector, but it was clear from Greenberg's comments that he still thinks kind of carriers are atop the hierarchy and sees a lot of the startup providers a lot lower.
Of course.
There was some pushback in a second article on that, and including from Caribou Hoeing and others. So yeah, this was quite the buzz.
As a carrier once told me, Rob, I was at a carrier's office and I was asking for a simple data feed, and they said, "James, the tail doesn't wag the dog here." And I'll never forget that, because it was just I was like, but it's just a data feed. It would solve all the problems that you're talking about. The tail doesn't wag the dog here. We're not going to produce that data feed, even though it would solve all of our problems. Yeah, he definitely took that gun out and shot that bird out of the sky, didn't he? At least he tried to.
So always good to have a little controversy in the insurance area. And then finally, on actually a little more straightforward news, I suppose, I actually published a thought leadership piece with Property Casualty 360 on what we call the case for connected insurance. So the panel that I was on was talking about this concept of connected insurance actually going beyond automation from, RPAs and other technologies to incorporating some of the sensors that we're talking about, another IoT, and bringing this together. And so I encourage folks to check that out.
Check it out. And of course, Rob's seminal piece on disruption and technology, The End of Insurance as We Know It. Always good to remember. He's got a book out there, folks. A good one, might I add. That taught me a lot. I really enjoyed reading it. Rob, always thanks for the news, and thanks for bringing the fire down from the mountain. Yann, so nice. Enchanté, mes amis. Et merci beaucoup for being on the show. I appreciate it, and it's nice to meet you.
Je vous en prie. Merci beaucoup. And my pleasure.
Yeah, so nice having you on, and enjoy life over there in Brooklyn. Glad things are getting back to normal. At least my niece tells me it feels a lot more normal than it used to, and life is kind of resuming, and the New York housing market is picking back up steam, and things are happening. May all of you out there in listener land not be hit by supplier disruptions. May the ports in Long Beach are there. I heard yesterday they're moving to 24-hour operations for the first time ever, to try and clear all the ships out of the harbor and get all the goods on land, and hopefully everything else will start flowing here in America. But in the meantime, we're going to keep geeking out on insurance tech every single dang week. And so it's good to have you on here and good to talk at the Insurtech Geek podcast, powered by JB Knowledge at jbknowledge.com. It's all about tech that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham. That's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith, endofinsurance.com. Big thanks to Jim Greenlee, our podcast producer, Kara Daltonaro, our creative producer, and thank you for joining us. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. See you next time.